Hi Stampers, this is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs, and today we're going to learn how to color on bleached images. If you'll notice my card, the 3 flower images I embossed with black embossing powder, colored with bleach, which I'm going to show you today, and then we used our ink pads to add color. So let me get started with showing you what we need for supplies today. For inks, we're going to need Hello Honey, Daffodil Delight, Old Olive, Memento Tuxedo Black, and Versamark. We're also going to need a blender pen and a paintbrush. And I have a little container here that I keep bleach in. We're going to need that to color with. For cardstock layers, we're going to need basic black 11 inches by 4 1/4 inches, scored at 5 1/2 in the center and folded. Daffodil Delight 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches, and crumb cake 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. For stamp sets, I'm using Butterfly Basics from the Occasions 2015 catalog. And we're using this flower image. We're also going to be using the gorgeous Grunge stamp set, and I'm using the little dotted image right here. And we're going to need the embossing buddy. So let's get started with our card. The first step is to rub the embossing buddy over your crumb cake cardstock piece. This helps with the static and from any of the embossing powder going in a place that you don't want it. So now I'm going to bring in my Versamark ink and my flower image. And I'm going to ink this upside down because it's a quite large stamp. And I'm just going to stamp it full length here, and then go shorter as I go to the other side of the cardstock. There's 2. And for the third one, we're just going to see a little peek of it in the corner. Okay, so there's my 3 images. I'm now going to bring in my black embossing powder. And I keep all my embossing powders in a Ziploc plastic container. And I do note the color and the item number, so it makes it easy if I need to order some more. It's right at my fingertips. I'm going to take my cardstock and lay it right in my container. And just put powder over the Versamark ink. Okay, and that's what my black embossing powder looks like. And I'm going to go use my heat tool to heat this up for you. Okay, now we have our stamped images all embossed and ready for coloring. So I'm going to bring in my bleach and my paintbrush. And you need to be very careful not to drop any bleach on the cardstock where you don't want it. So make sure you're very careful. So I'm just dipping my paintbrush in the bleach, and I'm going to make it wet, and you'll see it start to turn a lighter shade as you do this. And the more it dries, the whiter it gets. So I don't know if you can see that or not. There's my first flower that I've done already, and it's kind of has a yellow tint to it, and it's going to get whiter as we go. So I'm just going to keep adding color. And as I said, try to stay in the lines and try not to get any drips over onto your cardstock where you're not going to want any color. The stems I'm not going to do because they're so tiny that they will color with the ink anyway. Okay, so there's my first flower. You can see how it's starting to turn. So I'm going to pause the video and finish my other flowers, and I'll be right back. Now I've finished coloring all of my leaves and flowers and petals with the bleach. You can tell by looking at the color. Now I'm going to bring in my heat tool just to quicken the process. So you're going to hear a little bit of noise while I do this. And I just did this for a little while and I'm going to finish up, but I wanted to show you, you can see right here how it's turning even whiter as it dries. And now we are ready to add some color. One note on using the heat tool, make sure you let the bleach sit for a little bit before you do that, because if it's still pooled on top of your cardstock, you're probably going to move it around with your heat tool, and then you'll get bleach where you don't want it to. I'm going to bring in the Old Olive ink, and I'm going to use the ink from my ink pad to color. So what I do is I press in the center and then open up my lid, and I'm going to be using the ink that you see right here in the top of the lid. Going to bring in my blender pen, add a little bit of ink, and then I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up, and it's going to get lighter. And then I just add more at the bottom of the leaf. And if you use the full screen option in YouTube, you'll be able to see more of the detail as I color. But if you start out darker on the bottom and pull your way up, it gets lighter, so it adds dimension to your images. Sometimes I'll even rub some off on my scrap paper. Make sure you color on this cardstock quickly and don't linger too long in one area, because this is cardstock and not watercolor paper, and you can rip your paper as you go. And we'll just do each stem. As I stated, I didn't add bleach to the stems because they're so tiny anyway. More room for error with your bleach. Okay, we only have a couple more green spots, and then we'll move on to the flowers. But you can see how easily the bleached out cardstock takes to the color. I do go in and add a little bit more where the darker areas are when it dries up, just to add a little bit more shading, and usually more on the larger images. Okay, I think I have all my green. Oh, I see one more. Now we're going to switch over to my two yellows, and we're using Daffodil Delight and Hello Honey. And I'm going to start out with the Daffodil Delight, and for the flowers I start in the center and then work my way out. And we're going to go in and add the Hello Honey in the center again to darken that up a bit more. So you can see it's going from dark to light from the center out. And again, I'm moving pretty fast so that I don't linger to get the cardstock too wet so it causes problems. Okay, oh, one more. Okay, that's it for the Daffodil Delight. Now I'm going to bring in the Hello Honey, which is a tad bit darker, and I'm just going to add more just in the center of each of the larger flowers. Okay, and that's it for my shading. Doesn't that look pretty good? Now let's assemble our card. I'm going to bring in the basic black and fold it with my bone folder, followed by Daffodil Delight, And I guess I have to finish my stamping before I add the crumb cake in the middle here. I left out a couple things. We're going to add the sentiment with the Memento Black. And then I'm going to add a little bit of grunge. And so that it's not too dark, I'm going to actually stamp on my scrap first. And then add it to my stamped images. Oops. And see how that adds just a little bit to your card. And now we're ready to glue that to our card base. And as I turn this upside down, you can see how the bleach actually goes through. Pretty strong stuff. I'm going to glue that. And that's it for today's technique and card project. If you have any questions, as always, leave a comment here on YouTube or email me. I will have a list of all the supplies I used today at the end of my video. And thanks so much for visiting and stopping by. Have a good day.